That's right, yeah.
What was your first computer?
My first computer was a Sinclair Spectrum, way back in 80s or something like that, yeah, or 90s. I cannot remember really.
48 or 128?
It was 48.
Was
it
rubber,
had 48 kilo.
rubber keyboard, right?
Rubber keyboard, right. And that was really something, yeah. With the basic and loading the files from cassette recorder. This was a really nice time, yeah. These were the first steps, actually, yeah.
Yeah, and what you did with the computer?
Well, I was in the primary school at that time, and at first I was playing some games, and so, but quite quickly I started to research how you develop programs and so on. But it was a time, when there was no internet yet, actually very limited access to some books or documentation, and it was quite tough. Yeah. We had to invent almost everything by our own. And I remember there was a magazine who published source code for such applications. It was in the middle of the magazine, and then you have to retype all the source code. And then what I actually did was retype the source code and then figure out how it works and why it works and so on. Yeah. It was an interesting time.
Yeah. What games did you play back then? Remember a title, or what were these games?
Well, one of my favorites was Space Invaders.
Ah, okay. This is the classic
Do you know that game?
Yeah, of course. Everyone knows Space Invaders. Very good.
Yeah, right.
And why you started programming? So, I mean, you could just keep playing. So why you wanted to do something else?
Well, I was simply interested in how you make computer follow your commands, and how actually all those games work, and what do you do to make something similar. And this was quite fascinating. Then, as mentioned, I was there in primary school, and then this was really something that completely fascinated me. And I was using almost all my free time behind the computer, and you play games for a certain period, but then after that you get they get a little bit boring, and then you start to investigate new things. Yeah, and I guess it was just the idea what and how to program the computer, which was really fascinating.
So, what was the first serious working basic application with ZX Spectrum?
Well, what I first tried to do was to program some games myself. But on the Spectrum, this was really difficult, because in the basic you couldn't do very much, and then you had to switch to the assembly code quite quickly. However, this was then also the time, when the Commodore 64 came out. And then I also, I had some serious problems with Spectrum. It was overheating, and it didn't work quite stable. Yeah. And some colleagues at faculty then solved this somehow. They installed some cooling on the chips, but this Spectrum really didn't work very well. And then I switched to Commodore 64. And this is where actually I did more programming than on Spectrum.
Was it a problem with your ZX Spectrum, or was it a general problem? Because I remember my Spectrum worked well, but I had the next one.
Well, as far as I know, there were some series which were overheating. That was the main problem. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you could use it for an hour or an hour and a half, and then you had to switch it off and cool it off a little bit, and then again. But it was fine. It was fine, yeah.
And how you got the computers? I mean, you got it from your parents, or what was the idea?
Yeah, my parents bought the computers for me. Actually, what I did, I also did some saving. I saved some money myself. Yeah, I maybe something, and for presents, I got this, but it really wasn't enough. So my parents gave gave some money and bought this to me. Yeah.
And the C64, the Commodore, what you did with that? So what was your first program you wrote?
Well, actually, first real application was an application for making exams. There was this idea to make some exams. I was still in the primary school, and to make some exams from physics over the computer.
Wow.
And that. Well, it was not really something special. It was more or less an application. There were real problems there. You didn't have any database. You had to store all the data in the memory, and then if you wanted to save the data, you have to save it on the cassette recorder, as I already mentioned. Well, I didn't have the money for a floppy disk there. I remember it was possible to buy a 5.25 inch, 5.25 inch floppy disk drive, but this wasn't something which I could afford then. And this was really quite simple application. It randomly chose the questions, and then you had to write the answers, and then it matched the answers and gave a final report, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. But what I remember is I really found fascinating the storing the stuff on the tape. So there was a save command, and this was lots of fun. So you could save actually stuff on the tape. I can't remember what you could save, but you could save the program, the entire program. You could save the source code, but I cannot remember how you could save the data. But but it was fun back then.
Yeah, the data, I think the data had to be within the source code somehow. Yeah. Do you remember the turbo program for Commodore 64?
No, I only had the ZX Spectrum. So Commodore was my dream, but I never got it. So I had the ZX Spectrum, and then nothing, and then I got 8086, or there was a used one. So this was the story. So I only had two actually computers.
All right.
But, okay, what happened after the exam program with C64? So you kept hacking, or what was your next application? What was the progression? You were interested in programming, or?
I was very interested in programming, yeah. I spent the entire secondary school programming and dealing with computers and so on. This was really probably more than a hobby. It was a sort of passion, This was really something which I was very interested in, And I did several different programs. On one hand, some games, where you had to deal with assembly language. On the other hand, the basic programming language which was there, this was something, which I explored fully, and I still remember how you had to number the program lines code, and then very limited structure in the program. These were the times of go-to command and so on, And then, program by program, I realized how important it is to write the programs so well that they are well written and that they follow some structure, because doing whatever upgrades and changes into the code could become very difficult.
But what drove you? So what was your goal? So what you would like to achieve? To write the perfect game, or what was your motivation back then?
Well,
or how you got the idea for new software, because usually you say, oh, I would like to program this, and how it happened.
Yeah, well, I don't know really how this was. There was, this secondary school time where those programs, these were really not some professional applications. These were programs, so, for getting familiar with the computer, and we were a bunch of kids back then. I had some friends, and then we figured out what would be an interesting application, and at times we programmed everything. We didn't have such one application and the full focus on this application. But this changed then later in the secondary school. These were then the times when PC computers became more available. And then I switched from Commodore 64 to Schneider PC. Yeah. And this was then my first computer with disk operating system, MS-DOS. Yeah. It also had a floppy disk, 5.25 inch. If I remember correctly, 360 kilobytes was the limit of those floppy disks.
Yeah, the smaller were larger, I think, right? So there was double density and high density or something like this.
Yeah, something like that.
And the smaller disk, the 3.5 inch, were, I think, larger than the bigger ones, and the bigger ones were more brittle. I remember, because they were flexible.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what did you do with the Schneider?
Well, this was then getting serious. Well, I then started to program some more real life applications, and the first software that I started to develop, there were different things. I still continued. I got this physics teacher at secondary school who was very interested in this application for exams,
okay.
Which I already written in Commodore 64, and then I did a much improved version on the PC. This was one thing. The other part was that I was starting developing some applications for bookkeeping, for accounting, such as general ledger and an application where you calculate the salaries and so on. Yeah.
And you sold it to QuickBooks, right? Then.
Well, actually, this started like that I started to program this just for fun, Okay. My mother and my uncle both are accountants.
Okay.
And they know this stuff, and I started to program this, but soon there was quite a lot of interest in those applications. And while I was still in the secondary school, there were quite a few companies using this software, which was quite interesting, because I was basically still a boy,
How old were you back then, roughly?
15, 16, something like that.
So this was your first Ferrari, but you couldn't drive it, right?
Well, okay. From the money perspective, this was not so good. It was just funny how the people looked at me, that I would make the programs for them. At first, they were quite suspicious. They thought this is just a kid, How can he do something? But those programs were, they worked, They worked, and
which programming language you used? Visual Basic, or was it back then?
For the majority of those programs, I used Turbo Basic.
Turbo Basic, okay.
Yeah, this was a release of Basic.
It was for Borland, I assume, right?
Borland Turbo Basic, And then after that, I switched to DBase and Clipper.
Oh, okay.
If you remember
this is classic.
that,
I think 5 years ago, we had to port a DBase Clipper to Java. So it was one of my...
Come on, really?
And the interesting part is it was a crucial system which computed a revenue of a company, and it didn't run, I think... It stopped to run on Windows 7 back then. And we had to migrate that. And people I worked with had no idea about Java, so they told me what this program does. And this was actually accounting for the Wall Street. So it was really, really serious program, right?
Come on.
So and I had to write, simple Java code which is understandable to them. So basic public static stuff, no new, nothing, And but the interesting part is we migrated the entire software in 2 weeks, so it worked on Java. But then, the architects saw this and said, okay, but this is not written according to our standards. And they restarted the project. And I think they spent 10 million or something like this. And it still didn't work. With hundreds of consultants, UML diagrams or whatever, because the guys I worked with, they exactly knew how this program worked. So they told me what to do. I wrote, the algorithm. I say, does it work this way? I say, yes. Then we are done, right? And the others had to find out with research and I don't know what, and it never worked. So that was funny. So the DBase and Clipper, this is what I saw recently, as of 5 years ago. So I still remember the project.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you also do some programming in DBase and Clipper?
No. I only heard about that, and I saw the programs, but I never wrote any software with DBase and Clipper. But I had to migrate a lot of Clipper and DBase applications to Java. Or I was in project which did this. I helped the project. Right. Interesting. But I was told that it was really productive environment.
Yeah, it was, and those tools were really popular back then in those years. Yeah, and actually you could develop stuff really quickly. Mm-hmm. I had some libraries there and stuff which I developed on my own, and this was really productive environment for those years, and for the stand of software engineering back then. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. And okay, so this was already interesting. So what happened after that? So after your first QuickBooks program?
This was then the time when I started to visit the university, and I chose the computer science university.
So usually I ask, my guests why, but in your case it's obvious. You already said.
This was quite obvious, yeah.
Passion, yeah.
Yeah. And, if I was self-learning by the time before I started the university study, back then, some those BBS services were appearing, but these were still the times where no real internet and everything would be accessible and so on. This was really a tough time. And I still recall how we did some visits to CeBIT, the fair,
in Hanover.
In Hanover. Yeah.
When were you in Hanover? You remember this? Which year?
That would be now quite difficult. Let me calculate. It would be around 1990, somewhere like that.
So my first time at Hanover was 1995 or 7. So as Java was already around. And the interesting part is that in the morning there is a highway to the conference center, and in the morning they opened 4 lanes to the conference, or 5, and 1 lane back, and in the evening to switch that, because it was so high demand. I have no idea about the 1990s, but in 1995 it was huge.
I recall that, and this was really fascinating. We were discussing how smart the organizers are. Yeah. Okay. This was really good. Yeah. And then we collected all the possible.
Why you visited the CeBIT? I mean, you had something to sell, or you were just curious about the technology?
Just curious about the technology, yeah. And we collected all the possible materials and books and whatever was possible, and carried that home, and then we studied from those books, And then at the university, this was then the completely new thing, because there were professors, which opened really different perspectives on how programming can be done and so on. Yeah.
You liked the university, or were you more disappointed from the experience?
No, I liked the university. Okay. I liked the university. Yeah. It was quite challenging. By the time when I was on computer science, it was like that the first 2 years were more or less mathematics.
Yeah. Same here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was really tough. I still recall when I had the first year and linear algebra. I don't know how you say it. Yeah,
was it something like that? Yeah, it's at least German.
All right. And I still recall, this was new to me. In the secondary school, we didn't have that. Yeah. And there was that book, Introduction to Linear Algebra, and then I was driving with the bus every day, like half an hour to the university and back, and I was reading this book on the bus each and every day, And then after 10 or 14 days, things become a little more clear than at the beginning, because at the beginning it was like that. Wow, what is this? How will I ever understand this? Yeah, but then things started to you just have to put a lot or enough effort in the studies. Yeah, and the first 2 years were quite interesting, but then after that, there were a lot of computer science and software engineering classes and so on. And there I had some real experience. This was then no challenge anymore. For me,
What I found recently, I think 2 weeks ago, note from my university from math course, and I couldn't understand what you did, but the captions or the titles were funny. What I remember now, one was hyperplanes. I was like, wow, I saw this, what is a hyperplane? And there was stuff we did, I had no idea what it is. I know strange science, okay, I have to, now I'm really curious what we did, I completely forgot about that. So, but what I remember is I was not that interested in math usually before my university, and then I was motivated, and I was not bad. I was not, I was not the, the genius, but I really enjoyed math in my university. Which was a good experience as well.
I think it's quite important for a good software engineer to know
it doesn't hurt, at least,
It doesn't hurt. Definitely not. It can hurt while you study, I'm just joking, but I still recall my colleagues from economics faculty and business faculties and so on. They had much more time to party in the studying days than we did.
I had no time at all. So for me, this was the hardest part of my life, was the university. But regarding math, so yesterday actually I tried now to convert an integer to a bit set. And it was not that easy as I thought first, And then I remember the university said, I know it is possible something. So what I did, I remember, signed and unsigned integers, right? So I said, okay. So then I thought, what I can do, I can create a 0, invert everything, and shift once to the left, and it worked. So okay, cool. now we are talking. But I spent half an hour thinking. So I knew something, it's something behaves strange, but now I remember that. So it never hurts. Nice. So university. So what you learned, new programming language at the university? So you learned Java at the university or later?
Java was later. Java was immediately after I finished the university.
Okay. And at the university, what you learned? C and C++, or what were the languages?
C++, Pascal was really popular there.
Okay.
At that time, we did quite a lot of programming in assembly language.
Okay. Motorola 68.
We started on VAX,
okay.
The mainframe. These were the first. In the first year, we had assembly language on VAX.
You saw the machine, the VAX?
Yeah. Not only so, I use it quite a lot.
Yeah, but usually you never see them. You only can access them. But consultants I know, I worked for him. He had a VAX in his room. So
really?
So,
wow. Yeah. No, they showed that to us at the university. That wasn't a problem. We could see it. Yeah. Particularly, we were those students. We were more interested or more motivated, and then the professors were quite open for that. Yeah.
You had a nice university. Where you studied? What was the name of the university?
I studied at the University of Maribor in Slovenia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So it sounds like fun. So pragmatic professors and nice university.
It was a nice university, very nice university. I learned a lot, and they motivated me to do things to challenge the software engineering area.
I thought the professors, to challenge the professors. Any software you've wrote in your leisure during your university time, Because I can imagine what you did in university, the standard stuff. Something interesting you did aside, or you just fully focus on hacking for university assignments?
No, I in the first and a half year, I was really working for the university, because those were difficult mathematical courses and so on. But after that, there was enough time to do some other things. I continued with those software for accounting. Mm-hmm. And then there was this was the time when in our country there was a lot of need for software which would allow to assess the value of companies. Mm-hmm. There was, a lot of companies which were state-owned became private-owned and so on, and then there was a whole industry of assessing the value, and this was really something, and I did quite a lot of software. On one hand, there was, I can still remember a mathematical model, which I wrote myself actually, and then implemented in software. And it had really a lot of different parameters and values. And then it calculated all the possible combinations and
I assume a lot of linear algebra, right?
Quite a lot, yeah. Yeah, quite a lot.
So it
yeah.
paid off your time at the booth, with the 10 days with the book paid off now.
Yeah, it was well used. Yeah. You're right, yeah. Yeah.
And you sold this software or you just wrote it for fun or what?
No, I sold it, yeah. This was some money for student times, but this wasn't a fortune or something like that, This was so for comfortable living, and so that I could afford myself a new computer, maybe each year or each 2 years or something like that, yeah. And it was just enough to get in touch with real world problems, which was quite fascinating for me, because one thing you learn at the university or in school, and the other thing is when you figure out how things work in the real world and how which problems are the most important there. Yeah.
Okay. And after university, you learned in Java, right?
It was like that I finished the university in 1990.
Okay.
Yeah, just the year when when the rumors become around Java.
Java started in 1995, so you had 5 years, time.
Yeah, what I want, actually, I stayed at the university because after the diploma, I then started the PhD studies at the same university.
Okay, what topic?
Software engineering.
Okay. Yeah, but you remember the exam?
Yeah, I remember.
So what was the title? Yeah. What was the title of your thesis?
The title was the performance optimization of distributed object models.
Then I assume a little bit of Corba and decom.
Yeah, correct. A lot of Corba. Yeah. A lot of Corba.
Visigenics, Orbix, Ionic, right? Visigenics and Orbix and Jacob.
I used Orbix, Orbix was the one that I used mostly. But I also did a lot of RMI, remote method invocation in Java.
But this was before Java.
No. Just let me think about it once more. I actually I missed the dates a little bit. Yeah, I started sorry, this was my mistake now. Yeah.
You started the university in 1990?
Too old already. I started the university in 1990, and I finished in 1994, and then at 1994 I started the PhD studies and finished the PhD studies in 1999. Yeah, that's correct.
Then it's perfect because I think RMI came with JDK 1.1. And I really liked RMI, remote method invocation, because it's way easier than Corba. At the beginning, you have to generate with RMIC, the stubs and skeletons, but later no more. And you studied the performance, so you probably looked at the distributed garbage collector in RMI, right?
I did. I did quite a lot of stuff. And somehow this topic was quite popular back then, because I was working on that, and then at a certain moment, the editor of the JavaReport contacted me. Did you read the JavaReport at that time?
There was a JavaReport from US. This was right. This is US.
From US,
I had a subscription. JavaReport. This was with no shiny cover and really high quality paper, right? So what I remember. And I read it because there were lots of new stuff with JRocket back then. I remember they had some, ads about JRocket and all the shiny software and new ideas. I still have some issues somewhere,
Really?
Yeah, just for fun, yeah. There were a couple, JavaReport and another one, but I forgot them. Dr. Dobbs was more about C++. This JavaReport was Java, and the third one I forgot. There was a couple of magazines. Mm-hmm.
And JavaReport was something we also read at the university.
Yeah, it was fun to read because it was nicely done, nice layout, nice colors and nice design. So everything was nice actually.
Very nice, actually. Yeah. And then the editor contacted me and asked me if I would write an article about the performance of Corba and RMI for JavaReport. And of course, I said yes, I will. Why not? And I published there a paper, and then things started to move. Then I had a lot of feedback on that paper because performance evaluation is always challenging, or how would I say? Yeah, you can measure something, but you can never measure everything, and there is always some open space for what you could improve, and why didn't you do it like that, and how did you do the controlled environment and everything like that. And then people from IBM Java Technology Center from Hursley, UK, contacted me. And I got involved in their RMI IIoP project. If you can remember, that was the RMI which was compatible with Corba IIoP. This was Internet Inter-Orb Protocol.
This is RMI-IOP, right? RMI over IOP. This was the beginning of EJBs, because it was using EJBs. Right. Not bad. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that was quite interesting. And we did some really interesting performance optimizations there because the first version of RMI IOP was quite slow compared to classical RMI.
But because you had to map the Java types to Corba types back and forth.
Yes. And we did quite a lot of work there and improved the performance somehow. There was also some small part of my contribution to that project because...
you worked for IBM back then? Or
this was not really that I would be hired by IBM, but I was involved in somehow we were quite in close contact with people from IBM there, from the Java Technology Center, and they actually used those benchmarks, which I then improved from this article in JavaReport. And then we did some optimization, and of course, because Java was open source, this was then even easier to do. And this was then quite an interesting project back then. Yeah. And then, of course, because I did so much work on that became also the topic of my PhD.
Oh, okay. This was
part of it, yeah. It wasn't just that. My PhD was then also about Corba, and I did some more stuff there. Also some mathematical models behind and so on.
Of course, linear algebra.
But it was quite fun. We also published some articles about this, and once you start the PhD studies, you realize that those professional magazines are one part, but then you also have these scientific journals which publish research papers.
SCME or something like this, right?
Something like that, yeah. And in fact, one of those articles, or even two, I cannot remember right now, was published in ACM Sick Plan Notices. This was quite a popular research journal back then, and it published quite a lot of papers on also on Java and on stuff like that, yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So in RMI, I had interesting challenges back then as well. Less with the, let's say, communication overhead. So what happened in one project that the clients killed the server because of the distributed garbage collector. So how RMI worked, they had to say, I'm alive, and there were not many clients, only one server. So just, they denied of service the server because they pinged the entire time and the server couldn't keep with it. So we just changed, the DGC polling interval, and then the problem was solved. But it was interesting to see. So this was unique RMI feature. Corba didn't have that. So this is why RMI was said to be less scalable than Corba back then, I remember. So,
right.
Yeah.
You had such a large RMI project with so many clients.
At least there was a problem. I don't know how big the project was, but the clients were swing clients, actually. And it happened, right? So maybe, this was like, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe, the interval was changed by someone to be really short, and this was the problem. But what do you have to remember? The networks were also not that stable and not that fast. So maybe the problem was that they just, with all the requests, destroyed the network, and the server couldn't respond. So I don't I don't know what the problem was, but I remember the solution, which was interesting. And I also remember the argumentation back then. Then core by scale is better than NMI because of that. Interesting.
Right.
So what happened after this? So after your thesis, so you stayed at the university, I assume, and then what were your next Java project, or what were your interests, or whatever?
Well, yeah, indeed, I stayed at the university. Yeah. Actually, I still am at the university. Okay. I still am a professor at the university in software engineering. Although I'm not. Yeah, I'm not in Maribor anymore. I'm now at the University of Ljubljana.
Okay.
And the Slovenian capital.
Is it as nice as the Maribor one, or is it worse?
No, it's nice, you know.
Of course, this was just.
Yeah. No, it's, you know, it really isn't that much of a difference. Just that the University of Ljubljana is much larger.
Yeah.
It has more students. And well, otherwise, yeah.
You still teach Java at the university, so Java is still big, or?
Java is still big, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, I think in Ljubljana, certainly, I think in Maribor as well, the Java is also the first language that the students learn in the first year. Mm-hmm. So those introduction to programming is still taught with Java. Yeah. Mm-hmm. However, today the variety of programming languages is much larger. Yeah. If, for example, 10 years ago, most of the students were dedicated to Java, today this is not the case anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Students learn and use all different languages. Mm-hmm. Golang and Python and Node.js and so on. Mm-hmm. All those languages are quite popular. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, you know, this is the reality. Yeah.
Yeah. After your thesis, you started with Kumulus, or what was the road to KumuluzEE?
No, not yet. My thesis, I finished my thesis in 1999. Yeah. You know, way back. Yeah. And I was there at the university. We had some interesting research problems and also projects. Yeah. We did also a lot of stuff with industry. Mm-hmm. This was really good. I was there in a lab, in a laboratory at the university where a lot of importance was put also on real world collaboration with industry, with companies and so on. So we always had some really interesting projects, nationally and also internationally. And I was involved in several of them. We did some, you know, at that time, a lot of effort was put on migrating to Java. Companies were really interested in how to start using Java backend applications. There was a lot of things going on, and then JavaEE came out, the enterprise edition of Java, which really fascinated me, you know, and also the concept of application servers and everything like that. Those were interesting times, yeah. And I was continuing on that road, first EJBs, you know, then web services and so on. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I cannot recall how was that, but somehow I got in contact with Rocks Publishing. Uh-huh. I don't know if you remember them. These were those red books.
Red books, yeah.
Yeah, with pictures of authors on the covers.
Beginning of spring. I think Johnson wrote in Rocks. This was Rocks' book, Enterprise Java Without EJBs or something like this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, and then first I collaborated with several other authors on the EJB book. Oh. Yeah, they asked me to contribute a chapter on performance. Yeah, this was then my specialty. Yeah. And after that, also because of all those projects, I started myself a book project, Java Enterprise Application Integration. Uh-huh. So Enterprise Application Integration with J2EE. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And after that, I wrote quite a few more books. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You wrote it in English?
English, yeah.
For Rocks?
Yeah, they were, most of them were from Rocks, yeah.
Okay, then I wanted to check it out because I have lots of Rocks books, so I will now review my library from back then.
All right, check it out, whether you have one or not.
Yeah, because enterprise application integration, I either I wrote a book or I proposed one, but it didn't finish for Edison Wesley. And it was exactly the same title. I wrote one. It was JavaEE hotspots. I think this was 2000, something like this. And I wanted to write one about the JCA connectors and how to integrate with different connectors and adapters and stuff like that. And I have to look it up. What happened with that? But it was exactly the same title, so it was really interesting.
Yeah, this was quite a hot topic there at that time. I know this integration and how to integrate things with Java applications, with legacy software and so on. This was quite a hot topic.
Legacy. We had to integrate in a couple of projects with SAP back then. This was a challenge, how to do that. And they had a JCO connector, so you could wrap it with JCA, and this was fairly simple. And there were different approaches with hosts, which were not always online, available. So there you had strategies. What happens if the backend server is not available? So misuse GMS for polling and stuff like that. So I remember the topics. So this was challenges from my projects actually.
Yeah.
Nice. So you wrote a couple of Rocks books, and then?
Yeah. And then after that, the service-oriented architecture came out. This was a really hot topic. This motivated me very much. I was very involved in the service orchestration, particularly in the business process execution language, BPL.
Yeah.
And after that, the executable BPMN.
I never believed in that, BPL, because from the real-world perspective, it was basically programming. And the human problem was that particular persons just don't like to program. And the idea was that BPL was dedicated to more for the high-level business persons. And what happened in projects was that they didn't want to do that. So at the end of the day, we had to do this. And if I had the choice, to fiddle with XML or write Java code, I always prefer Java. So I say, okay, this will never fly, because if someone is able to orchestrate that with a nice tool, then just do it. But even, trivial problems like transforming two data transfer objects from one to another, via SOA, end up being either. I remember there were tools with arrows where you have to say this is this and this is this. But what if, a string becomes a date? So then it's over with arrows, and then you have to write a little bit of code. So this is where I said, okay, this will never fly, actually. I was pretty convinced. And back then in some projects, what we did, we instead of BPL, we just started another application server with very simple Java logic, and this worked better back then.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. There were quite a few challenges with SOA and BPM and stuff like that. Although I still like the idea that you decompose the application to services. This is certainly something which is also important today with the microservice architecture. And also this concept of orchestration. So if you do it the right way, then the services would be the business functionalities, and then you connect those business functionalities into business processes. This idea, the idea itself was quite interesting. Yeah.
Always, but what always happened in IT is that then the people try to solve everything with people,
Right, and that was one challenge. Yeah,
this was, if you do it right, it means it will be the choice is obvious, right? So you can say, I have the three services. Now, if I put in orchestration, I can just easily combine them. It's done. But you cannot just at the beginning of the project say, we will decouple everything and use just people or whatever. And the same is now, right? If you are in Azure Cloud, there are logic apps, for instance, where you can just have a visual editor. This works to a degree, but you cannot believe that you can do with the logic apps everything, right? It is just, if you have already services, maybe you could create additional ad hoc applications with logic apps, but I don't think you will be able to program the entire enterprise with logic apps, right? So this is the same story over and over again. It looks the same. Yeah. There's the same concepts over years. There is no difference. So you only have to know when to use it, right?
Yeah, this is really important. Yeah, and on the other hand, also the tools. If you ask me, the major vendors back then messed it up a little bit with BPM tools.
Yeah.
they were never really loose coupled, and you had to carry out all these dependencies on the data structures and XML and all those transformations, XSLT transformations and so on. This was really challenging, yeah, and it didn't live up to the promise that you would get a decoupled business process layer, which would be really loosely coupled with services. This never happened with BPL. Maybe BPMN, the executable BPM, improved this a little bit, but not enough, if you ask me.
Yeah, exactly.
There is still a lot of room for improvements, a lot of room. Yeah.
And the room of improvements is actually be more pragmatic, right? This is often enough. You cannot just do it everything with drag and drop or everything with programming. Sometimes, I mean, I remember where we used, was it from JBoss? It was the predecessor of Activity. JBP, how is it called?
JBPM.
Not before JBPM. It was a JBoss project, and then it became Activity. Now it is Activity, but it was based on the JBoss project. We have to look it up. I forgot it. I use it a lot.
Right.
Yeah, but why? Is because if you had long-running transaction in JavaEE, it is problematic. But long-running transaction in BPL was normal. So with that, you could just have a flow and say, okay, if a vendor doesn't respond in let's say 2 days, then the order becomes cancelled. And this was like a 5-minute task with BPL. But with JavaEE, I mean, you will have to set up timers, start something in a database. It was a mess. So, and this was beautiful. So we use a lot of projects with this JBoss just to handle long-running transactions, and this we saved days probably, without any need, for tools. It was fairly simple. So I would have.
This was good. Yeah. Also the compensation, all the compensation stuff for failed transactions. Yeah. This was also good, and also how you could call the services in asynchronous way from BPL. That was also quite nice. You could just do the invoke, and then you waited for a callback handler in a some things were quite good, yeah, but others not so, yeah. But the interesting thing was, I don't know why, but I was quite fascinating with BPL when it came out. And then there was this small company, Colaxa. Back then, I think it was 2003 or 4 or something like that. And I was studying this, and I started to write a book on BPL. This book then got quite popular later, but just at the time before the book would be published, Oracle took over the Colaxa.
Okay.
And this became then the Oracle BPL Process Manager, and after that, this became part of the Oracle SOA suite. I still recall that we had to then replace all the screenshots from Colaxa with Oracle, because this was just, at the moment, everything was already prepared. The book would just have to be printed. And then
Did you know that Colaxa became Oracle SOA suite?
Yeah. Oracle
by the way, you are right.
Colaxa.
It was JBPM. This is the name of
the
JBoss project.
JBPM,
I just look it up right now. Yeah. It was the JBPM, and it was great. And it was created by one guy from Sweden, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
was
know
at the
that.
beginning.
Yeah.
It was. I know it. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So you wrote a book about actually Oracle SOA suite without knowing it, right?
Yeah, you could say it like that. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
When was it, roughly?
I think it was 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
Incredible.
2004, yeah. I think it was one of the first books on BPA. It was quite interesting, yeah. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It was 2004, yeah. And this book then became quite popular later on. And then I followed this path, with services, web services, also BPMN, executable BPMN, and then we somehow started to realize that the days of these heavy application servers and process servers and all that stuff, because this was really heavy artillery. If you recall, all those servers which had to be in place in order that all those tools worked. Yeah. We started to realize that, well, do we really need such a heavyweight application service and so on? And then in the beginning of 2010, 11, 12, we started to do first some research projects about microservices and what would happen with Solver if it would be decomposed into microservices and so on. And it took off. And then, actually, we were quite a nice team there back then. We still are, yeah. And then we started to ask ourselves, can we do something like that for Java? Yeah. And this is how Cumulus started, the KumuluzEE framework. Well, at that time, we had some ambitions that we would develop a really lightweight platform which would allow companies to do digital transformation and to develop all those digital business applications and so on. And actually, there was a group of my colleagues which worked at the laboratory of. They all did master studies or PhDs under my supervision, and then they were really motivated to build a startup which would develop such a platform and then work on projects with companies. And this is then how the name Cumulus came up. It was really just simple, cloud computing. Let's take one of the clouds and then search which domain is still available. And of course, Cumulus, the way it is written in English, was not available anymore. And then we somehow did it with K and Z at the end,
Yeah.
And this is how it started, yeah. And one part of it was that microservice framework, because the Cumulus is actually a little bit larger than just the microservice framework. Mm-hmm. But we decided to open source this microservice framework, mm-hmm. and we had some working framework back then in 2014. This was quite early. And then in 2015, we said, okay, let's, I was going to Java 1 each year at that time in San Francisco. Yeah. And also at Oracle Open World. And, because I was a Java champion, I still am a Java champion. Yeah. At that time, Oracle even covered the travel expenses. It was a really nice time. Yeah.
They don't cover it anymore? I had no idea.
Now they are quite selective. Yeah, now you have to either have a presentation. There are much more strict rules. How do you get those travel costs covered than they were before? Yeah.
Okay, because they wanted to cover my costs as well. So okay, let's do it, and they say, yeah, but if we cover, you will fly to our schedule, and you have to come in 2 days earlier to attend a product presentation, whatever. And I say, okay, then I cannot do this. I had so many projects, so just 3 days more in San Francisco. I was like, I cannot. I cannot be 10 days in San Francisco. This is just crazy. So I say, okay, then I will pay by myself.
Although those products meetings were quite interesting.
Yeah, but I had no time. You have to tell my clients I'm 10 days away just to see.
I know.
They say, okay, then you are off. Yeah. Yeah, and I could imagine, because they were with the engineering team. I saw that with WebLogic and stuff. So you could, it's probably very interesting, right?
Yeah, that was really interesting. I enjoyed that very much, and I'm really sorry. Hopefully things will get to normal quite soon, so that we can travel again. But in 2015, we then proposed an article on microservices and how to develop backend applications with microservices, and why not to use application service anymore. Mm-hmm. And this article got rejected, and we got such comments from the reviewers that we just said, wow, are we doing something wrong?
Where you proposed the article?
To Java 1 conference, to the Java 1 conference, yeah, and it wasn't accepted actually. However, based on our article, Reza Rahman contacted me. You probably know him. He is very, very popular, and he said something like that. Well, you know, the Java 1 reviewing committee is a little more traditional. It is not yet the time for such radical changes, but I would like you to apply for the Duke Choice Award, because we still think this is a great thing what you did. And then we applied for the Duke Choice Award in 2015, and actually we were selected. We were one of those who got the Duke Choice Award for the KumuluzEE, the microservice framework, and it was really one of the first for standard Java.
Yeah, and
there was the Spring Boot framework.
I joined your award ceremony because it was outside. I remember this was between the hotels with nice music, and you were on stage, and I saw KumuluzEE. It's like an interesting project, so I actually joined your ceremony in San Francisco live.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great to hear.
Outside, there were 4 hotels, and there was the stage, and you were on stage, KumuluzEE, and there were the other projects I can remember. But because of the name, KumuluzEE, this was a great name. I remember that. What I also remember is the Reza pinged me and said, you have to look at KumuluzEE. And I had no problems with the application servers because I used back then Whitefly, Payara mostly. And they were small enough. So if you do reasonable applications, they started in 2 seconds. The memory consumption was easy, and I don't had, also in a typical business projects, actually it's true even now, we had probably 5, mostly 10 microservices. So my microservice Corsa is not like one-liner, it's more like a smaller application, self-contained applications. And I never had any problems. I get this interesting. But what I can do, I won't use KumuluzEE because I don't have such problem. And my clients have already contracts with Red Hat or whatever. I cannot just say we can use Cumulus just for fun. But
certainly.
What I did is I played with Cumulus. I started and did this looked interesting for me, and that's okay. So it's interesting not to invite you to hear the background about Cumulus, but the entire Cumulus team is really hard to find. I tried via Twitter, GitHub, and then I found a forum in a university and pinged your colleague, and this is how the contact happened.
Yeah, thank you very much for the contact. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
So, but what happens after the ceremony? So something changed for you, or was just you got the Duke, which is probably a nice one, right? A nice figure, the Duke.
It's nice, yeah. It's a nice figure. Yeah, we still have it there on the shelf.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we did a mistake because we never turned the KumuluzEE into a commercial project.
Okay.
But I don't mean that it should cost something to use it. It should still be open source, but we never build a team that would really take care for marketing and be present at conferences and do all the other stuff which is necessary to push such a product. On one hand, we are from Europe, if we would be from the States, this would probably be easier. We would certainly have to raise some investment money at 2015 to be able to do that. But we didn't do that at that time because KumuluzEE was always more a project of some enthusiasts which were digging into Java and trying what's possible to do. And, I completely agree with you. Today, the app servers are light enough so that this dilemma, whether you really need a very, very lightweight environment or not, this dilemma becomes obvious maybe when you start to go to the Kubernetes environment, there every kilobyte counts and every second counts, but otherwise you can live with those lightweight app servers. This is certainly true. On the other hand, we were really keen on cloud native computing and how to make applications work in cloud native environments, particularly in Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't start with KumuluzEE being just a lightweight runtime environment for Java. We started to add several different functionalities. For example, configuration, service discovery, health checks, and so on. And well, some of this stuff was then later also something which was addressed by microprofile. You certainly know this microprofile.
Yeah. I also know that Cumulus uses microprofile right now.
It uses microprofile, yeah. But the fact is that some things we did earlier than microprofile. For example, our configuration framework, although it is compatible with microprofile, it still has some really advanced stuff which you don't find in microprofile in other microprofile implementations. For example, we support etcd or console for distributed configuration, and then we will just now we will extend the configuration framework with some interesting injections which will allow you to inject the configuration from some other part and so on. And we in those years we did a lot of stuff. Actually, we added quite a few. We call them kumerusEE extensions, which go into the way.
What I would like to do is I would like to re-invite you back and talk about microservices and Cumulus and architecture, microservice architecture, if you are interested, just to recap, because otherwise it would be.
I see we ran out of time. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No
was
problem.
I talking too much?
This is it. No, I ask too many questions, but. This would be great, and this is always the case that the first invitation we talk about how something happened, and then we can focus more on the architecture, because otherwise it would be just too long. But regarding Kubernetes, the final point is a closing point. Actually, all my projects are Kubernetes or Kubernetes-like, so Kubernetes or ECS or OpenShift, which is Kubernetes, and we run either stock servers or Quarkus. And this is always not a big problem. I think stuff changes if you have if the services have to come and go, right? So, but this is not a lot of projects are like that. So usually we start, 4 microservices or 10 microservices. Of course, each of them has 2 instances, and they work forever, more or less. So if one dies once a half year, then it gets restarted. But there is no huge need to start and stop the services, because they are very fast and small enough, and the cost difference is not that much. So I have my own cloud accounts, and sometimes I forget the entire environment for a month. So this is a little bit more painful, but it's like 100 euros. So it is not like a huge amount which kills you, but there is a difference, but it's not a difference which causes a team of developers to migrate from one server to another, right? If you see it reasonable from the cost perspective.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and this, what's different is if you go in the direction of Lambda, where the functions are coming and going. So then it's a little bit different. But even then, if a Lambda is used a lot, it remains hot. So there is no need, to. So it is performant, and if it comes and goes, then something like GraalVM makes a true difference. But because if the service starts, in 1 second or 3 seconds, still too slow. And with GraalVM, it starts in, a tenth of the second. So this is a real difference between the environments. And also, you played for sure for clouds. It's not like, even without Java, if you set up the cloud or you create a new service, sometimes it takes, so last week, 3 minutes, 5 minutes to tear down the cloud. It's not like, the Java is slow. The entire thing reminds me, the early days with Xdoclet, where we generated something for 5 minutes to see the results. So it's not that different, even now with Terraform and all the toolings we have. So we cannot make, Java crazy fast, and then everything else takes forever. So this is also the set true of clouds, what I encounter right now, right?
Yeah, you're right. But, on the other hand, it's still like that maybe it's not only the startup time and shutdown time. it's also how you can flexibly include some modules and exclude them, and to really get the optimum code. And so
with you on a dedicated podcast, because you're a professor, so this is always fun, to challenge the professor, and have just discussion about architecture, BPL, microservices, just architecture, because how to structure. Because I'm from the real world. I will challenge you. We can have we have some fights, and just for fun, and of course, what I also would like to hear what was the microservice framework behind Kumulus would be also fun to note. So where people can find you on the internet? You are hard to find. So is there any chance?
No, not really. I have a LinkedIn account, which I use quite often. Yeah. Then you have my email address.
No, but I will put this on the show notes. So I will link to your LinkedIn account and university page.
And university page, yeah. That would work. Yeah.
So thank you.
That would be great.
It was fun.
Adam, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Yeah. And if there is something what we could do for you or your show or something like that, how do you manage those things? I don't know. Is there something that?
No, it's just fun for me.
All right, great.
Great.
Thank you very much again. And then I would love to talk with you again when you have time. Okay.